Welcome to this Work Hard Digital Info Session workshop where we're going over getting the most out of your remote meetings today featuring Zoom. And I am Ryan Haggerty. I am Director of Workforce Development and also Project Manage with Work Hard Pittsburgh, Work Hard Digital, and Academy Pittsburgh. Which are all things that are located in Pittsburgh, obviously. So appreciate everybody attending today. Just to kind of give you the whole, some takeaways and things to think about while we're sitting here. I'm sure you guys have lots of questions. So just some points of order. Courtney is on here as well, coordinating the workshop. So there is a little chat function at the bottom there that you can click on and ask questions in if you don't want to interrupt while I'm rolling. But I will give you time at the end of each slide that if you want to, unmute yourself and ask questions, feel free to. But really, this is to think about, we're all kind of experiencing this transition in the way we deliver services. And we're trying to do remote operations. People are working from home. People are trying to do outreach. People are sharing files, communications, information, all that fun stuff. And we're trying to think of, how do we translate what was maybe an in-person experience to a remote experience and still bring value to it so that people are, is looking forward as much as they can to another meeting, but, getting something out of it, right? So just to kind of kick this off, and this is something that you guys can chime in with, what kind of meetings are you guys having remotely? Like I know, I'll give you one example. We're doing a workshop here, right? But what kind of meetings are you guys going to and attending even more recently, I guess, that are now remote meetings for you? Oh, I see Matt.
Mostly work meetings.
Okay, so like regular stand-up kind of meetings, maybe?
Yeah, and then I do the little 12-step meetings too. We've been doing those too. So.
Oh, awesome! That's really powerful. Very cool. Anybody going to other kinds of meetings, perhaps, or events even that are remote?
I've been doing the happy hours every once in a while. The virtual.
So just kind of social events. Has that been kind of crazy and chaotic, or you take what you can take and then you dip out, or?
They're very short, yeah.
Okay. It's nice to talk to a human, though.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Cool.
Yeah, as a freelancer, I've had a couple client meetings, and then also my church on Sundays has been doing services as well.
Oh, wow. Are you helping out with getting any of that set up, or like acclimating your clients, or how's it going?
Yeah, I mean, it's been mostly pretty simple, just one versus one kind of conversations, and pretty short with client conversations. But I've just been a participant at the church gathering, which has been a much larger, Zoom call.
Nice. So, and Zaheen, did you have any other kinds you wanted to mention, or are you ready to roll to the next slide? Like I know you just can't wait.
Staff meetings, some group collaboration meetings. I've been taking a class online, so various uses.
Nice. So some trainings there. It sounds like some collaborative sort of meetings where you're maybe brainstorming and you want to be able to perhaps share the screen and share documents and things like that. So everybody's getting, dipping their toes into it if they haven't done it. And it sounds like there's maybe some new kinds of things that people are experiencing. But I'll just share some other kinds here that I've either used it for or have seen people use this for. So, and I'm going to bring up the interface while we're at it. So there's some extra options along the bottom here that you may not see in your Zoom, depending on if you are a participant versus a host, or if you have the features enabled, right? But typically it sounds like people are doing some of these regular meetings, whether it's, working with an AA group to help make that experience valuable for people that are getting, their therapy and kind of in recovery, working through that, work stuff, social stuff. But also thinking about even things like we started using Zoom initially to help people do a remote podcast recording, right? So you might have a guest that's in another part of the country. Your host is here in Pittsburgh, and you want to be able to, have like a good interaction, a good conversation, and not have to worry about people talking over one another, kind of missing the point, right? So just kind of bringing up the interface just to familiarize you with some of the things that you're going to see if you haven't already used some of these things, right? So next couple of slides, we are going to be talking about some best practices around audio and video. So, we at the very head of the meeting, we were just making sure everybody could hear us and that we could hear them. It's good to go through that and just kind of, make sure that everyone is being heard and they can hear you. But some best practice kind of things as you're working through this that you may notice or when things are working well or not working well, right? So I think everybody here is pretty much on a networked internet connection versus the data that's on their phone. You may still have a really great experience on your phone data as far as the audio quality, but you may also, notice some dropouts, words getting cut off. And there also tends to be a difference when someone is using the audio through their device, which is whether it's your laptop or your phone, it's that built-in, digital microphone that's on there, versus if they call in, you're going to hear a difference on that too. The one other thing that I have on here, and there's going to be more questions where you guys can participate too. I kind of just brought all these up, but just like a real meeting, helps to have a relatively quiet space. So if you're the one organizing the meeting, these are some things to think about as like part of your best practices. So if you're sending out that welcome email, or maybe you're the coordinator like Courtney and you're helping set everything up, you can mention these things and just, we're all trying to be respectful of each other's time and make sure that people are able to get what they want out of the meeting and not have to struggle to hear somebody over the sounds coming from the roadway or, I know people are at home with their kids now, which can be a challenge, but trying to get to the furthest corner of the house where you can have a little peace and quiet, right? So that's all under your audio function there, and you can unmute and mute yourself. If you are the host, like Courtney is right now, she can also go in and mute and unmute people in case they forget. So the next one over, and I'm just going to go through these really quickly and then bring the slides back up for you. But some of the other primary functions, obviously, a lot of us have our video activated, which are people on Facebook Live can't see, but hopefully you can see this when I drag it over to my shared screen here. So you can see all our smiling faces on a Tuesday afternoon here. But you can select your camera if it's built in. I actually have a camera that's plugged in because I do a lot of video and have some adapters to be able to do that. And then some of the other common ones that I'll just mention really quickly that we are going to go over. You have invite, manage participants, which obviously has to do with you as the host, helping manage the people in the room. Shared screen, which is what we're doing right now to be able to share these slides with you. The chat function, which is really nice if you can't be heard, to let people know that you can't be heard because you actually have a way to communicate with them or ask questions while I'm standing here blathering and getting to the end of the slide, as well as record, are a lot of the common ones. Now, there's a couple on here that I'm not going to go over, including closed caption and breakout rooms, which are some things that you can look up on the Zoom help page if it's a feature that you need, whether it's for accessibility in the case of closed caption, or maybe you're doing something like company interviews, right? And you need to assign individual breakout rooms for individual interview subjects. There's a way to do that too with Zoom. But getting back to some of these basics. Oh, that's the last one with audio I should mention there. Really, really low tech solution that can be helpful that a lot of us still have is, using a smartphone, putting it on a stand and plugging in some earbuds with a mic on it. Honestly, for my money, that's probably going to give you the highest quality that most people will have access to the tools that you're trying to use. So I'll go ahead and pause here. Anybody have any questions about anything we went over with audio or challenges they've had with audio that you're trying to kind of troubleshoot or problem solve?
There's been instances where I couldn't unmute people as a co-host.
as a co-host, you could not unmute people. Interesting. I don't know if that has to do with, was that person also a host or was that just a participant?
Participant.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, I'm not sure why it might not, unless their audio, were they, you said that you couldn't unmute them?
I couldn't unmute them.
I wonder if their audio wasn't activated somehow. It could have been that issue, but yeah, I don't know. That's a deeper dive. Good question though. Have to do a follow-up on that. The only other point I would mention here is that there are settings on Zoom to disable other sounds, such as notifications. So if you're constantly having company meetings and the host constantly has notification sounds, there is a setting to go in and change that so you all don't have to hear like every time they get a Facebook message or an email, right? You can actually turn that off. Okay. So next dive here is video. So I am going to ask you guys, oh, and there is my distracting visual there of Merlin in the sink. We have sink cats apparently. So with video, just thinking out loud here. So why would you guys want to have the video activated? Like when you're having these remote meetings, there's a lot of things that are kind of different just because of the technology. So how is video maybe helpful, or how does it, make the meeting more professional or personal, as the slide says there?
I mean, for myself, as an extroverted person, it helps to be connecting with people at least one step closer to face to face. So being able to read people's expressions and have some nonverbal communication always helps me.
Cool. Yeah, so just like you're sitting there in that meeting, especially if you're meeting people for the first time, right? Matt had mentioned a client. Everybody else was talking about work meetings and stuff. But yeah, being able to see someone's reaction you get so much more out of that meeting, just feeling like you connected with somebody, right? What else? Like, what are some other things that it might help facilitate the flow of the meeting, perhaps? Well, I'll ask it this way. What do people not like about straight up just conference calls on the phone with no video? What's frustrating about that experience?
There's no emotional attachment. Like, it's like a human. You want to see people's reaction.
Okay, so we want to be able to connect with them, but if you can't see who's talking, right, you're also going to end up talking over each other a lot. I know, knowing that, Zoom and Hangouts and all these other apps exist with video now. I know everybody's like keeping up appearances as best they can and sometimes don't want to use video. Not to pick on Zaheen because he's having technical issues, but it helps to just facilitate the flow of the meeting, just to know who's talking, right? To be able to take turns when you're talking. And just like you guys were saying, you're able to read people's reactions. And if you notice the little green padlock here, these are security things that are really easy to do that can help you out though. So just having the video on, who's in the room, right? You can see them. Obviously, having people's names typed in, that's another professional thing to mention to your coworkers and collaborators. If someone's using a nickname or whatever, just because people are trolling these things because they're so used right now, you can avoid a lot of that just by doing some basic protocol steps. So, and accountability too, right? I know, like everybody else, we're all busy, we're all working from home, we're figuring out how to manage our time. But if we're all agreeing to be here at a certain time and go over something in this meeting, it's nice to know that everyone's actually listening to what's being said, that they are giving of their time and not going to ask the same questions after the meeting because, they weren't paying attention. So just something to think about for the kind of meeting, because video doesn't always make sense, right? I mentioned webinars. Right now, a lot of organizations are doing webinars to help people access loans and other funding. Typically in those meetings, there's going to be, maybe over 100 people. We don't necessarily want to hear and see what everybody's doing because it's more of an information share, right? And webinars are actually a different kind of Zoom license that you can add on. And if you've been in one, you'll know, because you don't have the ability to have your mic input or your video activated, but they do have like the little raise hand feature. They have the Q&A and the chat feature in there too. So worth kind of throwing out there if you guys were wondering what the heck those were called. But yeah, so I'll pause here again now that we're at the end of this slide. But anybody have any other questions about use of the video, or I don't know, I guess have any other best practices they wanted to share?
The only thing I was going to add was I actually was on a Zoom call last night for a nonprofit board, and just the ability to make decisions as a group was a lot easier. Being able to see people visually, we're able to add visual communication and not have to jump in to give thumbs up, give twinkle fingers and whatnot to be able to move the conversation forward, and it was very helpful.
Nice. Yeah, and I think it sounds like people are having positive reactions to having video versus not, which obviously internet bandwidth can be a challenge for all of us right now because we're all in our caves on the internet. But yeah, welcome the rest of Zaheen. Good to see you. But yeah, so as you're thinking about this and you're just like doing your little checklist of like, what can I do to be more secure? Certainly, having people use their real names as well as having their video activated is going to let you know who's in the room. So next thing was video, right? So this is another common experience is people are setting up their laptops, trying to find that quiet room in their house, figure out, what can we do to make this more personal and professional? And you'll often end up with something that looks like this. So this is me sitting directly with a window behind me with my smartphone with just the light in the room that's overhead lighting on me, right? So can't really see the expressions in my face, which is what we just said we wanted to be able to see in those reactions. So what's a good solution to fix a problem like this, where I'm backlit and my camera is making me dark and my background's bright? Like, what should I do to try to solve that? As I look at all you people with your faces with light on them and I can see your expressions.
Window in front of you would probably, like, just pivot.
Yeah. So Tyler's got it. He's on point there. So yeah, I mean, if you have another bright light source in the room, you generally want the brighter light source in front of you with, darker background behind you. You're just going to pop out from the background a little bit. Obviously people can see your eyes, they can see your expressions and things like that. So super easy fix. There's higher end solutions too. I know some of the people that do content creation here have their own little LED lights set up. I have a ridiculous LED light set up in front of me up here that I use for like video interviews and stuff, which is a little bit overkill, but might as well show it off if we're trying to be professional here. So yeah, but exactly like Tyler said, face that light source, give people something to look at. And like Dylan said, make your meetings more valuable because you guys can actually see your reactions. All right. So the next one is something that I've been talking about and just wanted to kind of reiterate some of these points. So just like you're doing in real life, you guys normally you'll have someone who's running the meeting, right? When you're doing these meeting protocols, you normally have someone taking notes. Maybe there's an agenda that's prepared, whatever it is that's going to kind of set the tone. So at the very top of this one, the very first thing I did was just introduce it. What is the point? Why are we all here? What are we looking to get out of this? And also I kind of shared with you guys a little bit about the protocol that, we're going to use audio in this meeting versus just having to use the chat room. But maybe you just want to have everybody muted and use the chat room and do more like a webinar for the sake of time. So just kind of state that at the head so people have an expectation of what they're getting into, but also they can, know how to engage for the meeting. The other function that we used today that Courtney actually was running was the waiting room. So were you guys confused today when you got in the waiting room? Was that something you'd used before or totally blew your minds, or is that becoming pretty normal now for your Zoom meetings?
I I actually didn't make it into the waiting room just because of the link situation, but I was in the one meeting that you hosted the last time. So yeah, they're getting, I mean, they're simple.
Yeah.
Waiting room.
Yeah. So if you think about it, she can see the list of the names of people that are trying to get into that waiting room, which I know my little security thing isn't showing up. It will here in a second, but this could be a security feature too, because you'll know who's trying to get into that room and you can choose to admit them or not. The other way to think about a waiting room being useful, I guess you could use a breakout room for this too, but a waiting room can be a good way if you have scheduled things and you're just leaving the Zoom room open. So going back to the example of doing remote interviews, right? This could be a really, really handy feature that you're wrapping up the one interview, the other person's in the waiting room because they showed up early because it's an interview, right? Just like they would in real life. You can go into the waiting room and actually message them and say, hey, we'll be with you in 5 or like whatever, to know that they're noticed, but it's not their time yet. We use this for our remote podcast guests as well, where we would just leave the Zoom room open and then admit people into the waiting room as we wrapped up with a previous guest.
And if I could add, if you're the host too, you can add to the group chat. You can change the audience so you can, talk directly to those in the waiting room. So that's a cool feature too.
Yeah. I mean, Zoom's constantly adding new things. So I think, especially right now with the number of people that are using it and the user feedback they're probably getting for the different kinds of industries that have started using it, they're always trying to add things that, like I said, translate that real life experience and just make it a little bit easier to manage us humans, but also just to communicate and present things. So the other use of the waiting room, since we are running this as a workshop and people signed up, Courtney had her sheet from Eventbrite downloaded and was able to go in and, create a checklist. And as she admitted people in the room, could check them off of the roll call. And then if people didn't make it into the room, she was able to do a little outreach with the invite button, just to remind people of the meeting link in case they were having a problem getting into the room. So, always consider your audience when you're setting these things up. And not to say that anybody of any generation or any skill base is going to have trouble with Zoom, but if someone is not using like remote meetings yet, consider how you set this up and how you might be able to make that a little bit more user-friendly for them. Mute all is a feature on Zoom. If you are the host, and these are all host features that we're talking about, by the way, I don't know if I mentioned that at the top. So if you're not seeing this on your little drop down, which is probably at the top of your screen, when you're screen sharing and it's full screen, a lot of times it's like your little computer dock. It'll just kind of hide at the top of the screen there. I had a visitor coming up there. My cat was on my back there for a second. But, if people do forget to mute and you as the host can't figure out who is unmuted and you're hearing someone's music playing or whatever, you can use that Alt-M key to mute all as the host, or unmute all if for some reason you all need to be able to vote on something or whatever. It's just a quick way to kind of handle your humans. All right, another helpful thing, and this is how we're trying to run all of our Zoom meetings now, is having a host and a co-host, right? So just like real life, when you're the presenter and you're trying to remember everything that you're talking about, and the technical side of your brain is being strained because you're managing a chat, which I see a little chat coming up. Oh, she got it on there. Thanks, Courtney. And you're trying to moderate the chat. You're trying to watch your Facebook Live. You're trying to make sure people can get into the room. Really nice to have backup, to have that other person there, whether they're, just making sure that everybody got checked in, making sure their audio is working, moderating the chat, just consider your use case and how would it be useful to have that other person coordinating the room. And for my money, I'm going to say that this is going to become more of a service. So I could see companies offering this to people that, maybe they're running in-house trainings, maybe they're doing a conference, but just like you would be running audio video equipment at an event, this is becoming probably more of a valuable thing, whether it's internal or being hired out by contract workers to do. This is Banks. Just jumped up in my lap. Okay. Final thing I'll mention on here, it's really easy to forget, but you have that little chat feature there, which will normally light up kind of an orangish yellow if someone has chatted and it hasn't been read. But check the chat. It's really, really easy to get your energy going at the beginning of the meeting and not know that someone's audio is not working, or that they're just having some kind of issues. They can't see the screen share or whatever. And they're missing out, and you just don't know it because you didn't bother to look in the chat, right? So I'll just point out there the 2 security features that we mentioned. If you're keeping a little running list, and we are going to share this slide with you guys in an email after. But just some very, very simple, basic things that don't cause too much inconvenience that you can do to make sure the right people are coming into your meeting and you're not about to be Zoom bombed. So I'll pause there. So anybody questions about hosting, kind of managing participants kind of things, or things that you're thinking about that you're like, this is what we do in real life. How do we do this in Zoom kind of questions while we're here?
I feel like I've used before, not very often, but isn't there a way to raise a hand or notify someone that you want to speak or something?
Yeah, so there's a raft of settings, which I had mentioned, like the breakout rooms was one. Some are specific to webinar. That's one thing I'm still kind of getting into. I know Q&A is specific to webinar, but I think we can activate the raise hand feature in these meetings, especially if it's, a larger number of people. So yeah, I would say to Dylan's point, that raise hand feature could be useful once you're getting closer to like maybe 20 participants in your meeting. I'd say if you're under 10, certainly want to have a meeting protocol, but you could probably get away with everybody just being muted and watching each other's faces on the video screen and kind of piping in when you need to. But yeah, that raise hand feature, you'll often see it used in webinars, but I believe that is something that comes with at least the pro level of account that you can activate as well.